Hey guys, it's Emma, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then hello, nice to meet you. I'm a full-time singer-songwriter musician-y type, and this is where the music happens. I have another channel on here just called Hi It's Emma, where the chaos happens. Basically over there I do talky style vids, I do art stuff, and I do social commentary mainly. But like I said, this is the music channel, so if you're looking for the music you are in the right place. And this is the, I want to say 7th, that's 7th, in a little series I've been doing called Emma Learns Logic, where basically, as it says on the tin, I am teaching myself music production using Logic Pro X because I've got the 3-month free trial, which actually is going to run out in, I think it's like 12 days time or something like that. It's not long now. But the whole point of this series was to give it a try and to basically start learning some music production stuff. And I have been approaching it by re-recording one of my old covers, Twit by Pasa. I really love that song. And I was quite disappointed with how that cover turned out because I just didn't think it was that good, so I've been doing a fully produced version of it using MIDI instruments and adding electric guitar and drum samples and all of this sort of fun stuff to create a full fleshed out, fully produced version of the song. And we are now into the home straight. These are the last 2 videos that will be going up, mostly because my free trial ends soon, but also because the song is basically finished and it just needs some finishing touches putting on it now for next week. But this week I did the final overall steps of mixing and production, i.e. effects and a little bit of what they call sweetening. So obviously that's things like reverb and delay, and using the EQ to do some fun, different effects with it as well was what I mainly did this week. I will be carrying on doing similar things for the next week's video, so when we get to the end of this video I'll go into more detail, but basically I would like people to give the song a listen and let me know what they're liking about it and what other little final tweaks they would do just to finish it off, any other little additions you think would just make it perfect. Anyway, let's go through what I did this week first of all though. So the main thing I did was I put reverb on everything. So this is the first plugin I have used that doesn't seem to have anything to do with volume. I already knew what reverb does. Reverb essentially puts your sound in a space. So when you're in a room and you're just speaking or singing, you're gonna get a certain amount of room. Like when you're in a really big space, like a church, you tend to actually get also echoes and stuff coming back. Like there are loads of clips online of people like standing in tunnels and singing into them, and you literally get a very clear almost repeat, and that's what delay does. Delay does like a clear echo, whereas reverb is more that sort of echo you get that isn't really an echo but more just a reflection of the sound back at you, and it makes them sound like they're in certain spaces. So sometimes if you want to try and make yourself sound like you're singing in the cave, you can put certain reverb on in the mixing process that make it sound like you were in a cave even though you weren't when you recorded it. It's an important step that generally you can't really leave off. Like things sound weird without any reverb on because they just sound too dead. I'm not a massive fan of the big reverb sound, you know, the lots of reverb sound. I like just enough just to sweeten things a little bit without being able to hear that there's reverb on it. Just enough to make it sound natural. So that's what I've gone for, mainly. One thing I did learn this week that I did not know was that apparently reverb uses up a lot of the energy on your laptop. It uses up a lot of, I'm assuming it's the RAM. The RAM is the one that you use it. I forget which one is the storage one and which one is the use this to run programs on, but I think it's the RAM that you run programs on. And apparently reverbs are especially bad for using up all that space, using up all that energy, and because of that you don't want to be doing loads of them. So you don't really, if you can avoid it, want to have a separate reverb on every single track. You want to be able to send a bunch of tracks to a bus, put a reverb on that. We briefly discussed buses in my compression video the other week, and bus tracks are basically, they're not your main instrument tracks, they are tracks that you can send your instruments to, and you can control how much of the signal from your original track, so like my lead vocal track for example, I can control how much of my lead vocal signal gets sent to this bus track to then be affected by whatever I put on there. And obviously I did this with some compression in my compression video last week to get a certain effect on that, and this week I have done it with all of my reverb and my delay, and that meant that I could then send all of certain vocals that I wanted to have very similar reverb on to one track, vocals that I wanted to have slightly different reverb on, because I knew that some of the softer, higher, more harmony part harmonies as opposed to the ad-lib type harmonies or some of the chorus harmonies, I wanted them to have more reverb on, or not more reverb, I wanted them a different reverb I wanted to have a reverb that had more space to it on them, and I went for a slightly different quality in the reverb as well. I knew I wanted 2 different types of reverb on the different vocals, but I was then able to send all of the vocals that I wanted to have that reverb on to 2 tracks, and that helps to save the energy and make sure your program doesn't crash. Other times it obviously makes sense just to, if you're only putting one type of reverb on one track, you might as well just stick it on that track. Silly to send it to a bus if that's not what you're doing. Anyway, so I sent all of my lead vocals to one track, and my ad-libby style vocals, the ones that sounded like they were part of the lead vocal even if they're not, and then I sent all of my quite airy-fairy harmony parts to another track. And for both of them I used the Reverb plugin because I watched a whole video on YouTube by somebody who, I think the YouTube channel is called Why Logic Pro Rules, and they've got a website, and basically all their videos are around Logic Pro, which was very helpful because as much as I love the Recording Revolution dude, because his video has been very helpful for me to understand recording concepts and all that, one problem is that he does use Pro Tools and I am obviously using Logic, so it got hard to work out what I could use as equivalents when he was talking about specific types of compression or specific EQ plugins, and mine looked very different on Logic, so it was actually very helpful this week, especially with Reverb, because his Reverb plugin looked very different from some of the Logic ones I have, and this Logic one went through some of the different types of reverb you can get on it, specifically this Reverb. And I really liked the look of this Reverb, and I specifically really liked the display that you get, where you can actually see the light show going on. So you can kind of see a visual representation of what your reverb is actually looking like, which is very cool and very much fitted with how my brain works. I liked that. And for the first one I decided to go with the theatre setting. So like you got all the different room types you can put it in, and each of those has a different quality to them, and I liked the theatre one for my lead vocal because it had a nice space to it without being too echoey sounding. I changed the pre-delay to a little bit higher than it was originally set, and I brought down the size and the density. I knew I didn't want it too big sounding, but the best thing about this Reverb, the thing I really liked about it was then you've got this EQ bit in the details tab, so that I know that I've watched videos in the past of people doing mixing on vocals and stuff, and they pretty much always say to do EQ and compression, then put reverb on, and then come back and do more EQ after you've done your reverb, because you want to EQ your reverb as well. But this means that you're basically building in the EQ to the reverb, so this is just EQing the reverbed vocal. So if there are frequencies in the reverby vocal that you're not liking so much, you can just bring them down, which I did. I put this low pass, words I've learned. That's basically when you take out some of the high frequencies, and a high pass is when you take out the lower ones. But I put a little bit of a low pass on the reverb vocal, and I just wanted to bring it down so that the reverb was more affecting more of the lower frequencies, and I liked how that sounded a bit better. I don't know if I'm speaking complete rubbish there, but it sounded nicer to me once I was able to bring down these higher frequencies and take out a couple of frequencies in the sort of mid-higher range that I wasn't liking as much. Anyway, that's what I did for those, and then for the others, Reverb again, but I went with the reflective hall for this one because I wanted a bigger sounding space. You can see the size of the space as well. I went with bigger. I went with a shorter pre-delay this time though, and I gave it less of the dry and more of the wet frequency because I just wanted the whole reverb for these harmony parts to be a bit more spacey. But again, I took out some of those high frequencies in the EQ again because I just wasn't as into that. I did one more reverb bus, and this one I sent my acoustic guitar, and I think I sent my drums to it too, didn't I? I was right. I sent both my drums and my acoustic guitar to this reverb track, which just has the silver verb on, which is a nice, really simple looking reverb, and I just wanted something really basic on that. I didn't want to do anything fancy with it. Has basically all the same settings, just you don't have the fancy EQ thing, you don't have the fancy display. But then I didn't put quite as high a signal going through for these. So the acoustic guitar's at -3.5, the clicks are at -13, they're really low, the toms are at -4, and the midnight break drum set is at -3.6. So I didn't send the signal through massively, because that's another way you can control how much reverb is on a track, is just how much signal you send to the bus track. Anywho, The last thing I wanted to talk you guys through was a little attempt I had at putting an effect on the start of the track. So I told you guys I wanted to do something with this intro part, and I'm still not entirely happy exactly with how the intro sounds yet. I think it needs a whooshing sound of some kind or something like that. I'm thinking maybe one of those reversed cymbals will sound nice. But one thing I did do was I put this effect on it. So I did 3 things to this intro part. First of all, the lead vocal. I wanted loads of delay just at the start of this lead vocal. And while watching the Recording Revolution dude's video on sweetening, I learned that I could put in an effect on a track and not have it be on all the time using automation. Now, I sort of already knew what automation is, in that you could use it to change the volume of a track throughout the song. So automation obviously just means to make something happen automatically. And you can automate things like your heating so it comes on at a certain time. So you can automate the volume of a certain track so that it's louder in one part and quieter in another. Just something I need to go through and tweak in the song as a whole, and I will do for next week. But I learned that I could also automate the effects. And basically you can put a plugin on a track, or you can send a track to a bus track, which I've done with the lead vocal again. I'd sent it to another bus to do this because I wanted to put a couple of effects on this. And then you can automate it to stop sending the signal to that bus track at a certain point. So I have the automation set on the lead vocal so that the send auxiliary 11, so the signal sent to auxiliary 11, which is the track I put my effects on, is at a certain volume up until the end of the intro part, and I just did the first line, the first word in the chorus as well, the nonen. That was terribly pronounced, very sorry. But that one word as well, I had kept the effects on for that. And then it goes down to 0. The send goes down to 0 so that the track basically isn't getting any signal through, so the effect isn't playing, so the delay goes away. I didn't just put delay on this track, I also put an EQ on, and I put on one of those sort of phone effect style EQs where you're just boosting very central, in this case this sort of middle high frequencies, and you're keeping the really high and the really low frequencies all pushed down. Obviously that's only really affecting the delay, it's not affecting the actual vocal, so the vocal doesn't sound like it's coming through a phone, but the delay that's on it is only coming out in those frequencies, which I liked a little bit better. I don't know, maybe it sounds silly to you guys. Let me know what you think of this, if you think it sounds good or not, or if you think it sounds silly. Then for the other tracks, I just put their effects straight onto the track. So I did basically exactly the same thing with the bass and the guitar, slightly different, but I did one of these phone EQs on them. So with the bass, it was pushing up the frequencies around the 600 to 1800 sort of mark, and on the acoustic guitar was the other one I did it on. That one's boosting the EQ around the 700 to about the 2800-ish, 700-ish mark. And that's making both of those sound very small and very distant because I wanted that intro part to really contrast with that first chorus when it kicks in, and I still think it needs something a bit more so it really kicks in hard there. But I think that by reducing the bass and the guitar, not by taking down the volumes, but by putting this effect on them, means that then when everything kicks back in with the chorus, it sounds really impactful. I might also take out the drums in that part. I'm thinking about maybe just getting rid of the drums altogether in that intro part, but I'll give it a listen through this week and decide on that. Let me know what you guys think, if you think it would sound better if I took the drums out or not. And again, I just used automation to do this. So I did something slightly different with the automation here. I didn't just alter the actual automation. I did something called inserting a bypass. So when you bypass a plugin, that basically means it doesn't use it. It's off. And if you want to switch an effect on or off throughout a track, you can just set a bypass in the automation. So I just go to the acoustic guitar track, I go to main, in this case is where I found it eventually, and I go to insert bypass bit, and it gives me options about where I want to insert a bypass. Insert 3 bypass channel EQ is what I went for because the second channel EQ I put on was what had my phone effect EQ on it. So that was the one I wanted to bypass and not bypass at certain points in the song. Now with the bass, I just inserted the one bypass at the end of the intro bit because I didn't want this effect going anywhere else in the song. So it's on for the intro bit and then it's bypassed once the intro is over into the rest of the song. But for the acoustic guitar, you can see that I have the effect on up until the bypass that actually kicks in at the first verse rather than at the start of the chorus, and then it comes back on in the chorus and comes back off at the post-chorus. So the effect is on for all of the choruses and off for the rest of the track. And I think that makes the acoustic guitar actually stand out more in those choruses because it was getting a bit lost in the choruses and I wasn't really sure what to do because I did the EQ in a certain way on the acoustic guitar that's supposed to help make it stand out a little bit more, but I was finding that even that wasn't really making it stand out enough. But this phone effect EQ really made it punch through and feel more percussive in those choruses, but I didn't want it anywhere else in the track because I definitely didn't want it whenever I was strumming the acoustic guitar because it would have sounded a bit weird then, and I definitely didn't want it in the verses because the acoustic guitar is much more prevalent in the verses because there's no electric guitar. So I didn't want it then, I wanted it to sound like an actual acoustic guitar then. But I think that really adds something to the track. So that's what I did this week. I haven't messed around with just the overall automation to do the volumes yet, so I'm going to do that this week for certain. And I'm going to keep going through and doing this sweetening stage. So the sweetening stage, from what I can tell, is basically just adding various effects and automation and little tidbits to the song in places and working on your arrangement overall to make the song sound interesting all the way through. At the moment, I have some ideas that I know I want to work through. I want to boost the volumes of certain things and certain bits. I'm going to work on the automation with that. I'm going to play around with having one of those reversed cymbals, I think, at the end of the intro bit and maybe in other sections of the song. But I would really love to know what you guys think I should consider adding in effects-wise, anything you would tweak. But yeah, what else would you do just to finish this track off and polish it up? So I'll play what we have so far, play as many bits of it as possible now for you to listen to. And if you just want to let me know in the comments what you think. If you want to hear the song as it sounds currently, a full version, let me know and I shall bob you a message or something with it, because obviously it's a sound file, so it's going to be nice and easy just to message to people. If anybody wants to hear what it sounds like currently, exactly, from start to finish, let me know and I'll just send it over to you to have a listen to. It will be playing throughout this quietly and clearly on the end screen as always though. I'm very sorry this didn't come out on Thursday. I've been working on stuff for my single this week, so it's actually Thursday that I'm filming it because I completely forgot to do I'd done the work, I just forgot that I needed to film the talkie video yesterday because I got distracted doing the rest, so I'm very sorry about that. I probably will do it again next week though. I'll put up this video on Friday next week, but we'll return to our Thursday schedule after that. And what I will do is I will put up the last in the series of the Emma Learns Logic videos of me finishing off the track, and then I shall follow it up the Thursday of the following week with a little lip-synced version of what it sounds like at the end. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a like, check out the rest of my channel, and make sure you hit that subscribe button because, like I said, new single coming out in the new year. And if you want to support me through that, then the best thing you can do is you can go and head to all of the links in the description to all of my social media. My Talkie channel videos will also be returning soon in the new year. I've got lots of ideas for art videos, and I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to be aiming for one a month of the social commentary videos from now on. up to 2 or 3 maybe if there are things I want to talk about that week, but my main aim is just going to be do 1 a month and see where we go from there. So lots of art, lots of fun, occasional ranting. If you want to check that out and see what I do on there already, that will also be linked in the description. Finally, you can also support me by checking out my live streams on a platform called sessionslive.com. My profile on that will be linked in the description as well. There are ways that you can support me on there by giving me money in the form of tips we call love, but you can also support me on there completely for free by joining my crew and completing missions, and that doesn't have to cost you any money. I need to head off and get ready for a stream on there this evening now, actually, so I'm gonna go get ready for that. But that's all for this week, guys, and I shall see you next week with the final installment of how this little project is going. Bye!